This is my pick for the best Druid leveling build of Season 6 Vessel of Hatred. As you can see, it is a Lightning Storm build, but if you've leveled with Druid in the last couple of seasons, you know that we're going to start with Wind Shear and Calm Breeze. But this build incorporates far more than that, and as we transition to the mid game, we're going to drop the Calm Breeze, and we're going to go for a slightly different setup. But Calm Breeze is really strong early, so we're definitely going to pick that up. If you've just started your character, you're going to want to head to the Grinning Labyrinth in Dry Steppes. This is where you can get the Calm Breeze aspect, and that's going to be really strong in the first few levels. And that will pretty much carry you all the way up until like level 30. But of course, as you get other aspects, you can start to bring the build online, and you're going to start relying on this a lot less. So if you get lucky, you could get your build online fairly early. Now to make this build strong, we're taking advantage of multiple different sources of lightning bolts. Those sources are going to include Runeworker's Conduit, Lightning Dancers, and Bad Omen in our skill tree. But on top of that, we're also getting the lightning damage from our Lightning Storm, lightning damage from our Cataclysm, and once we replace the Calm Breeze, we're going to end up getting overcharged into the build as well. And if we get the Stormcrows aspect, we're going to be able to drop our Wolves and get even more lightning damage from our companions. How early you come across the Stormcrows aspect is going to determine whether or not you actually use it. Because I'd probably take Stormcrows aspect early on instead of Retaliation. But as you start to get more towards the mid game, you're probably going to want to start scaling your core skills more, so Retaliation becomes more valuable. So it's really situational. For our defensive aspects, we're loading in a bunch of survivability for the early game, mostly in the form of armor. And we're getting a bunch of resistances from our tempers. So whenever you see a hole in your resistances, just temper that onto whatever defensive item you're putting on. We're getting a little bit of movement speed from Slaughter, and that's going to help us get around quicker. As for our offensive tempers, we're going to be putting lightning bolt damage on all of our items. And you want to put this on as early as possible because that additive damage is really important in the early game. It kind of tapers off once you get to the late game. And keep in mind that we're also scaling all of our lightning bolts with our Runeworker's Conduit as well, which is why it's on our two-hander. In the early game when you're using Wolves, the Wolves are going to be tanking for you and dishing out a decent amount of damage. But if you put the Stormcrows in, you won't have the tanks anymore, but it should be okay because you should be dishing out a lot more damage at that point. Now I have all of this additional information listed in the information below the aspects and down below, but just so that you're aware, we're going to be transitioning to Earthspike and Ravens. This should be what your build looks like once you're in the mid game. The reason we're going for the Earthspike is because this is going to trigger Resonance, and Resonance is going to make both our Cataclysm stronger if we use Earthspike before casting it, and also make our channels with Lightning Storm stronger for the entire duration of the Lightning Storm. And just for you guys, I did do the leveling path as accurately as I could. So if you follow this, you can actually see the exact order of what you should get and when. But of course, you're going to change Wind Shear to Earthspike, and you're going to go for the Wild Earthspike here. And you're also going to be changing your Wolves to Ravens. And if you don't have good Cataclysm uptime, then you're probably going to want to go for the Ferocious Ravens. One consideration here, though, is that your Wolves are going to be giving you Fortify. So if you don't have another source of Fortify in your build, then you may want to keep the Wolves if you're using Retaliation, because Retaliation scales off of your amount of Fortify. Your Trample's going to be there to break out a CC, but it's also a really good way to get a bunch of Spirit all at once if you're hurting on Spirit. Hopefully you get a Mjolnir ring pretty early on, and you won't have to worry about Spirit as much, but we have plenty of ways to cover Spirit in this build, so don't worry about it. Now let's talk about Clarity and Resonance. So Resonance is right here in the passive tree, and this is going to give you 18% more damage, or even more if you have this on your amulet, whenever you use your Earthspike before using Cataclysm, or casting Earthspike before you use Lightning Storm. And that's for channeling Lightning Storm, so you have to actually hold the button down and stand still for the entire duration of the cast. If you move, you're going to need to cast that Earthspike again. And for Clarity, this is going to be a huge buff to that damage, especially if you get ranks to this on your amulet. But the key component to this is you have to cast your companion skills before you cast your Lightning Storm. And this one doesn't apply to the Cataclysm. But this is giving damage and critical strike chance, so it's very powerful. And you can do up to 3 companion casts before a Lightning Storm cast if you get resets on your companions, which we're getting from our Spirit Boons, which is this pack leader one here. And to simplify things for you guys, I'm actually going to create a variation of the build, and I'll include any of the uniques that are useful to find, as well as the Earthspike and Stormcrow setup. Mobalytics hasn't updated its Paragon boards yet, so I included a section here for the Paragons. But of course, you should probably be swapping to an endgame build once you get to the point that you actually have Paragon points anyways. But this should give you a little bit of direction in case you're a little slow to changing over. But the long story short, you want to make sure that all of the Paragon glyphs and nodes that you choose are actually going to apply to your damage type, which is lightning and non-physical. And if you happen to have Tempest Roar, then you're going to have additional options with werewolf and shapeshifting. And the shapeshifting glyph actually applies to the entire duration of your channel, so it works the same as resonance or clarity. Now for rune words, I imagine that in the early game you're not going to have access to the exact ones that you want, but I listed a couple of early ones that would be pretty good here. This one's a legendary, so it may not be very accessible, but standing still is something that will do a lot with this build for channeling, so this is definitely a strong one if you get it. We've also got Restore Primary Resource. This is going to be great before you get the Mjolnir Ring when you're limited on Spirit. I also put Casting a Skill After Moving and Critical Strike Chance. Especially early on, the additional Critical Strike Chance can really help with your DPS. Not to mention that a lot of our lightning is based off of critical striking. Alright, and here's the mid-game tab. So I've got the setup with the Earth Spike and the Ravens. We've changed around our aspects and included unique items. And this will really help you transition to the late game. I also went ahead and included some of our masterworking and tempering that wasn't the same in the previous version. But this is not designed to be an endgame build, so don't put too many resources into perfecting this. And one more note, the mercenaries are not active on Mobalytics yet, so when it comes to mercenaries, just choose whatever is going to fill the gaps in your build. For example, if you feel like you're not having enough vulnerable uptime, maybe your Cataclysm's not up enough, you could go with a hero that's going to give you vulnerable. I think I'd personally choose the mercenary that gives attack speed, because your channeling actually scales with attack speed, and you can get a whole lot of attack speed from it, not to mention some movement speed. But the tank mercenary is also really good. Now just a final note for leveling in Season 6, my plan is to finish the season quest so I can get that stuff to come online, which will allow me access to do the events, which gives you those nice experience potions. I'll probably do a few of those, gather up some experience potions so I have multiple, and then I'll start doing other content, probably Helltide. I'll probably hold off on doing my class quest until I've gathered up the spirit boons I need, and then I'll go and get that done. And then I'm probably going to make the rounds and get all the strongholds, because even though they nerfed the stronghold XP, it's still pretty good. And that should help me get up close to max level. From there, I'll probably just level up doing whatever I need to do, whether that be doing nightmare dungeons for some upgrading mats, or any other content that I need to do in order to progress my character. By the way, last season I messed up by not hitting Legion events. Make sure you go to Legion events fairly often, because you're going to need a ton of iron and stuff that you get from Legion events, far more than you get other places. Oh, and of course, do whispers and turn them in whenever you have them. You can typically multitask and get whispers done while you're doing other content. But that's it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you like this content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join my Discord and stop by my Twitch stream. I'm going to do my best to cover everything Druid related, and I'm also going to hit up a lot of Spiritborn stuff as well. So I've got plenty more content coming out, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Goodbye.